Welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome to my YouTube channel at Better Black America TV on YouTube. We got some political news. We got to talk about the Trump administration is doing big things, and I'm trying to tell you, it's I'm the messenger. Okay, I'm not a Trump supporter, a political analyst. A political. I do political commentary, no different than a sports analyst or a sports commentator. Okay, so it is what it is. So there are some things that went on this week that I know a lot of people did not hear anything about. There are some things that went down this week that, we got to talk about, because when I saw the executive order that the president signed this week to end crime and disorder on American streets, and the flagship part or the component of this particular executive order is to end homelessness in major and urban cities, and it's going to be done by HUD, housing urban development. Okay, and a lot of people don't really understand what's going on, so I gotta do the work. Okay, like I said, something what you don't want to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this particular executive order. It was signed on July 24th, and I believe that was Thursday because the day is the 26th. And it's a White House website. A lot of people, when I speak about Trump, they have issue with it. They want to, where you get your information from, you bonehead. It's like, listen, it's not personal. God's people shall not perish due to the lack of knowledge. So I'm giving you knowledge so you can understand what's going on and why we have to make the move that we've been trying to make all of these years. Because I'm gonna just give you a fun fact, because the Democratic Party of today is yesterday's Communist Party. But before I get into that, I'm gonna go ahead and read this, and then I'm going to get into the Martin Luther King declassified files. There's some astonishing things over there, and people really got to understand what's really going on. So if you did not know, the Trump administration is attempting, the federal government is attempting to end crime and disorder on the American streets. Not throw out no crime bill, not lock everybody up, not give everybody 3 strikes. But the Trump administration has signed, President Trump has signed an executive order to end crime and disorder on American streets. And I saw the press conference, and they was talking about, that nobody should be homeless, nobody should be sleep streets, that the individuals that's on the streets may be drug addicts or whatever, instead of lock them up, that they need to have treatment, and they need to have adequate housing. And I'm sitting back saying, wow, how is this so? The racist Donald Trump, this douchebag that nobody likes, the ones that the Democrats just try to throw under the bus every single time, is attacking and going after homelessness. And this is crazy. This is off the White House website. So when I clip it up, before you sit back and say, where did you get your information from? This is the White House website. I saw him sign the bill this week, and it's to end crime and disorder in the American streets. And I'm going to go ahead and read through it. It is what it is. I got some time today. It's Saturday. So just to know, if you are an American citizen and you love this country, this is a win for the American people once again. This is a win for the American people once again. A divided house cannot stand. Unity is the key. And this is how we got the big, beautiful bill pushed through. Tax cuts for the poor. Who cares about how much money the rich and wealthy make, as long as your situation has changed? And now here's a situation where the president of the United States has signed an executive order to end crime and disorder on American streets. And I'm gonna go ahead and read it, and it reads as follows. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1, purpose and policy. Epidemic vagrancy, disorder, behavior, sudden confrontations, and violent attacks have been made our American cities unsafe. Now, the number of individuals living on the streets in the United States on a single night during the last year of the previous administration is in the sums of the number of 274,224, which was the highest ever recorded. So we just got out of a situation where the highest homeless rate ever recorded was just documented under the last administration. and I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but it is what it is. Back to the topic at hand. The overwhelming majority of these individuals are addicted to drugs, have mental health conditions, or both. Nearly 2/3 of the homeless individuals having regular uses of hard drugs like methamphetamines, cocaine, or opioids in their lifetime. An equally large share of homeless individuals reported suffering from mental health conditions. Okay. Mental health conditions. Now, the federal government and the states have spent tens of millions of dollars on failed programs that address homelessness, but does not address the root causes, leaving other citizens vulnerable to the public safety in the streets. I can't believe it. The Trump administration to clean up the streets. And the only way that they could get this done is if we support this and apply pressure and make sure that they get it done, because a house divided can't stand, and we're going to have to back the current administration because we are Americans. Okay. Now, shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutions, shifting homeless individuals into long-term. So not just put them in the hole for a day or two. They want long-term, but this is the key. That's a red flag for me. Shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings for humane treatments through appropriate use of commitment will restore public order. Surrendering our cities and citizens to this disorder and fear is neither compassionate to the homeless or other citizens. My administration will take a new approach focused on protecting public safety. So, protecting public safety. This is what the president is doing. And we appreciate the president when he came down, sent the federal troops for public safety here in LA, and did not let the summer protest pop off down. The Kings, no Kings for a Day protest. They pretty much wasted a lot of money because they wanted LA to explode and then crazy so the whole country can be a part of it. But he sent in the federal troops to shut that down due to the intelligence from the FBI. So we appreciate that. So Trump is basically saying my administration will take a new approach focused on protecting public safety. And that's a beautiful thing, protecting public safety. And that's all of us. Okay, Section 2, restoring civil commitment. Now, the Attorney General in the consultation with the Secretary of Health and Human Services will take appropriate actions to seek in appropriate cases of federal, state, judicial, and to terminate the degrees that impede the United States policy of encouraging civil commitment of those with mental illness who pose risk to themselves, the public, or the living on the streets and cannot care for themselves in appropriate facilities for appropriate periods of time. Meaning the individuals that are struggling, with homelessness, job to job, really don't have a roof over their head. The president's administration is attempting to do some type of long-term effect, because putting a band-aid on it does not work. Okay, we don't need we need cures, and this is a situation where we need a cure. Okay, Section 2, provide assistance to the state. Now, one thing where the mayor of Los Angeles, we out of LA, and the Mayor Bass has something negative to say. Where are we going to get the money from? Okay, it says it right here, Mayor Bass. It says provide assistance to the state and local government. So the federal government is willing to provide assistance to state and local governments through technical guidance, grants, and other legally available means for the identification, adoption, and to maximally flexible civil commitment, institution treatment, and a step down treatment standards that would allow for the appropriate commitment and treatment of individuals with mental illness who pose a danger to others or are living on the streets and cannot care for themselves. Meaning, if you can't care for yourself, if you out there, and I'm talking about the guy that's just walking around dirty, he in the street, he's a nuisance, he clearly has nowhere to go. This is who we're talking about. And the Trump administration is talking about, through legislation and through public assistance to actually help the states. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing, to actually help the states. And when you have a divided house and the mayor, because I did see Karen Bass, they asked her a question about it, and he was like, where are we going to get the funding? So the government is saying right now we will provide assistance to state and local governments. So what Mayor Bass needs to do is tuck her tail and jump on the first plane to DC and sit in front of the president and basically put out your agenda and get the resources to help the community, because that's what needs to go on. You need to get along. So instead, this is our homeless situation, Mr. President, and we could utilize these funds, and you guys need to hug it out, because a house divided cannot stand. And states, I've never seen in history where the state defeated the federal government. It has never happened. Never happened. So you might as well, get along. Section 3. And this what got me a little nervous a little bit, because it's fighting vagrancy on American streets. And I remember in the history books and in college studying, reconciliation, the Renaissance, and doing all of these things in the South. The Act of 1866 was signed 2 weeks after the end of the Civil War. Okay, and the Vagrancy Act of 66, meaning they was able to put a ball and chain, okay, on any person that appeared to be homeless, put a ball and chain on anybody that needs to, on anybody that appears to be vagrant or anything like that. It is what it is. So Section 3, and I'm reading now, okay, Section 3, fighting vagrancy on American streets. Now, the Attorney General, the Secretary of Health and Human, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and the Secretary of Transportation shall take immediate steps to assess their, their grant program to determine whether priority force grants may be given to grantees in states and municipalities, and they actively meet below the criteria, the maximum extent permitted by law. Okay, let me see here. Enforce prohibitions to open illicit drug use. To enforce prohibitions on open illicit drug use, meaning to shut it down. They don't want people out there on the streets openly shooting and doing whatever. Enforce prohibitions on urban camping and loitering. So this is the housing encampment. So they want to put a situation where they want to end, the urban camping and loitering, rid of the camps. This is crazy. This is crazy. Okay. And then let me see here. Enforce prohibitions on urban squatting. Squatting meaning individuals that would actually get into your homes, do anything like that. Let me see here. Let me see here. Let me handle some business real quick. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to get a moderator, because you people, I can see the comments, but you crazy. Okay. Now, enforce prohibitions on urban squatting, enforce prohibitions on urban camping and loitering, enforce prohibitions on open illicit drug use, meaning they want to ban it. Okay. Just like prohibition when it comes to, the alcohol and all of that. So they want to ban squatting, illicit drug use, and urban camping and loitering. And this is the Trump administration. I'm reading this executive order that the president signed this week. Now, let me see here. Number 4, enforce where necessary standards that address individuals who are a danger to themselves or others and suffer from serious illnesses and substance use disorder, or what are living on the streets and cannot care for themselves through assisted outpatient treatment, or by moving them into treatment centers or other appropriate facility via civil commitment or other available means to the maximum extent permitted by law, meaning by any means necessary. So by any means necessary, they're going to go off the streets. And this is what the Trump administration is suggesting in this particular bill that he signed over the weekend, and is classified as ending crime and disorder on American streets. And it was actually signed in law on July 24th of 2025. So the Republican Party, the racist president, is trying to help the homeless and impoverished situation. And it's kind of crazy, because I'm gonna tie it in, because it's I've read the Dr. King files, and it's right on point, so I'm gonna go ahead and get through it, and then I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the Dr. King's files and see where it's all tied in, and then it's all going to make sense. So I appreciate you guys. So stick with me. Okay. Now let me see here. Number 5, substantially implement and comply with the extent required the registration and notification obligations of sex offender registry and notification, particularly in the case of registered sex offenders with no fixed addresses, including a adequate mapping and checking the location of homeless sex offenders. I don't know how they're going to do that. But, with the Epstein's files coming out, I can't for them to come out, but for this situation in Section 5 to have a registry for drug offenders, even if they do not have an address. So you mean in track them? You're going to put a something on their ankle? What you going to do? A little tracking device? I don't know, but it is what it is. Okay, now B, the Attorney General shall ensure homeless individuals arrested for federal crimes are evaluated consistent with 18 USC whatever to determine whether they are sexually dangerous person and certified accordingly for civil commitment. So this is some laws and some codes that they put into play because it seems like they're trying to clear the streets up. Okay, to ensure that individuals arrested for federal crimes are evaluated consistent with 18 USC 4248 to determine whether they are sexually dangerous persons and certified accordingly for civil commitment, meaning if they even have the right to actually be on the streets. So we talking about, institutionalizing, like it used to be, because we have to clear the streets up because they threw out the crazy folks. It used to be a crazy house and all of that, but somehow through to democratic legislation, they pretty much, put people out in the streets. So instead of putting them in jail, just institutionalize them to get them off the streets, because public safety is real and we should not be affected and offended by all of these things that's really going on. Now, let me see here. Okay, here's another one. I'm gonna go ahead and continue to finish. Okay, now take all necessary steps to ensure the availability. This is the key. Karen Bass, I hope you're listening right now. This is the key. This is the key right here. Okay, this is the key. Take all necessary steps to ensure the availability of funds under the Emergency Federal Law Enforcement Assistance Program to support as consistent to 34 USC 50101 Esquire, whatever, which is encampment removal efforts in areas for which public is at risk and the state and local resources are inadequate. So if you are a city in the city of Los Angeles, and we have this homeless encampment situation and the governor can't do anything about it, mayor can't do anything about it, this is the funding right here. So the president is lifelines to the state and to local officials, because we have a homeless situation, encampment situation here in LA that's out of hands under the freeway overpass, all of these things. And the president of the United States is stepping in to basically take care of issues that's going on in local cities. And that's a beautiful thing. Because it says it right here. Okay. Take all necessary steps to ensure the availability of funds, the Emergency Federal Law Enforcement Assistance Program to support as consistent with 34 USC 50101 encampment removal efforts, in areas in which safety is at risk and the state and local resources are inadequate. So, California, LA, the city, the county, funding is inadequate. So this is why I'm saying to the mayor, you go ahead and just sign a peace treaty and go talk to the president of the United States, because the president of the United States is literally trying to help with the homeless situation. So right now I'm reading Donald Trump's executive action to end poverty and homelessness. Let's go and keep it 100. This is what this executive action, and I'm reading it directly off the website, off the White House website. Okay, so we already said necessary steps to ensure availability of funds. So the federal government will have funds available for the states to end these encampments, to ensure public safety, to get mentally ill, drug addicts, and individuals off, because that works for the American people. This is the greatest country in the world, and it's finally a situation where we need to fix it. Okay, now let me see here. Now, where was I? Okay, next section. Passes federal resources to determine whether they may be directed towards ensuring, to the extent permitted by law, that detainees with serious mental illness are not released into the public because of the lack of forensic bed capacity at appropriate local, state, and federal jails, hospitals. So meaning, if there's not no bed space, if the prisons or the county jails are overcrowded, you just cannot throw a mentally ill patient out there, because this is why mentally ill patient go back out into the streets, commit another crime, and then you have another victim. So this is a public safety bill, a public safety executive order that the president have signed. And like I said, I'm just a messenger. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm a supporter of the United States of America. And this is a good thing. And it's like right on time. And I wonder why the governor, Gavin Newsom of the state of California, the mayor, Karen Bass, has not figured it out. So now you got the president finna come into your backyard and clean up your house, like he sent the federal troops to downtown LA to assist the federal prison or the federal jailing system downtown LA, which shut down. And then when he removed the federal troops, they out there, picking it back up again, because I guess, the state or the local officials do not want these issues to end. Divided house cannot stand. One nation under God, and we're going to figure this thing out. Okay, remember this, we got 3 more years to go. So we're going to figure this thing out. So let me see here. Enhanced requirements that prisons and residential re-entry centers that are under the authority of the Attorney General or receive funding from the Attorney General require in-custody housing release plans, and to the maximum extent, require the individuals to comply. So this particular section, section 4, out of section 3, enhanced requirements that prisons and residential re-entry centers that are under the authority of the Attorney General or receive funding from the Attorney General require in-custody housing release plans. So before you let them out, a custody housing release plan, meaning we're not just going to let you out the side door of the jail and just figure it out. No, while you're in custody, there's going to be a housing plan before you get released, so we can actually do away with the lifestyle that the individual who would be benefiting from this, because it's pretty much throwing them back into a situation, and all they're going to do is just find themselves, going back into that same situation. So this is a solution. Now, for the first, like I said, I'm not going to say for the first time, but for the first time in modern history that I've ever seen the federal government trying to have a solution other than put a band-aid on it, because usually the game. Okay, you throw the drugs in the area, you get the drug dealer selling dope, and then you arrest them for selling dope. You get the addict hooked on the drugs, and then you arrest them for being an addict. It was just a cold, dirty game. So this is why this, particular administration is different from any presidential, any president that we ever had, because they usually just play the game. They know the game. Okay, even Reagan got caught up, with the Contras and all that cocaine just flood the United States. And then when they had the conversation, he was on record, saying, I don't recall. Okay, because they made that happen. Okay, but this particular situation, they trying to stop it because the president's executive order includes enhanced requirements that prisons and residential re-entry centers that are under the authority of the Attorney General or receive funding from the Attorney General require in-custody release plans. In-custody release plans. So before they let you out, that's a beautiful thing. In-custody release plans. That's a beautiful thing. Okay, now Section 4, redirecting federal resources towards effective methods of addressing homelessness. And I like the wording, because they're redirecting federal resources towards the effective methods of addressing. We're looking for effective methods. Okay. Now, the Secretary of Health and Human Services will take the appropriate action to ensure that discretionary grants, now the money to ensure go to the right people. Okay. Ensure that discretionary grants issued by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration for Substance Use Disorder Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery Fund evidence-based programs and do fund programs that fail to achieve adequate outcomes, including so-called harm reductions or safe consumption efforts that only facilitate illegal drug use and its attendant. So think about that. So somebody sat back and did like I said, this is a good thing. For the first time in our lifetime, we're going to end a situation because this is an executive order from the President of the United States. Okay. To ensure that discretionary grants issued to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration for Substance Use Disorder Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery Fund evidence programs and do not fund, this is the key, do not fund programs that fail, meaning the programs that's already failed, meaning they're not going to fund what's going on right now because they're going to create something new. Okay, because do not fund programs that fail to achieve adequate outcomes, including so-called harm reduction or safe consumption efforts that only facilitate illegal drug use and its attendant harm. That's crazy. This is prevention. This is not a band-aid. This is a solution. This is good. Now, let me see here. Provide technical assistance, outpatient treatment programs for individuals with serious mental illnesses or addiction during and after civil commitment process focused on shifting such individuals off the streets and public programs and into private housing and support networks. Come on, man. See, you will never get the real if you don't read the real. This is what I'm talking about. So these are solutions and resolutions. You got individuals that really don't care about humanity. They really hate themselves. Okay, because only a person that hates themselves can be classed as a hater. Because if you love your neighbors, you love yourself. You're going to share love and information, and I love you. So this is why I'm providing this information, because I know that you're not going to see this anywhere else. Okay, because like I said, I somehow found my niche as providing information and knowledge, because knowledge is a terrible thing to waste. The mind is a terrible thing to waste, and knowledge is power, and God's people shall not perish due to the lack of it. So let's continue. Ensure that federal funds for federal qualified health centers and certified community behavior health clinics reduce rather than promote homelessness by supporting to the maximum extent permitted by law comprehensive services for individuals with serious mental illnesses and substance use disorder, including crisis intervention services. That's crazy. And I'm reading this for the first time. So we talking about including crisis intervention services, meaning they want to stop the epidemic of homelessness, to stop the epidemic of encampments, to stop the epidemic of crime. This is crazy. The Attorney General shall prioritize available funding to support the expansion of drug courts and mental health courts for individuals for which such diversion services of public safety. So they even going to develop a mental health court or drug court. So you don't have to be criminalized and caught up in a system because you happen to have an addiction. You won't just because you got some bad luck out there and you might find yourself homeless. So they are separating the situation, and I guarantee you the long play of the game is to end, like I said, involuntary servitude, because Proposition 6 did not pass. Okay, now that's crazy. That's crazy. The Attorney General shall prioritize available funding to support the expansion of drug courts and mental health courts for individuals for which such diversion serves public safety. So diversion programs, these are diversion programs that the president of the United States is implementing for the American people under the, under public safety. It is what it is. Now, Section 5. Increasing accountability and safety in America homeless program. Now, the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development shall take appropriate actions to increase ability in their provisions of and grants award for homeless assistance, transitional living programs. These actions shall include the extent permitted by law, ending support for housing policies that deprioritize accountability and fail to promote treatment. So they're saying if you're not providing some type of treatment, you can get to that next level. So based on this particular section in Section 5, okay, based on this particular section in Section 5, and I'm gonna stop right here and I'm gonna move on and I'm gonna continue with a part 2 because we got to get through this, because we got to understand one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. But they're basically saying before you even talk about housing and anything like that, these individuals need treatment. Okay, Section 5, and I'm gonna close out this particular part of the telecast because I got some other things that I need to share with you. So Section 5 of Trump's executive order, increasing accountability and safety in America's homeless program. So the programs that have been receiving these fundings, you can be accountable now, okay? Because increasing the accountability and safety in America's homeless program. Now, the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Secretary of Urban Development shall take appropriate action to increase accountability in their provisions of the grants awarded for homeless assistance and transitional living programs. These actions shall include, to the extent permitted by law, ending support for housing first, this is the key, policies, and prioritize accountability for failed programs to promote treatment. Okay, let me see that again. Now, these actions shall include the extent permitted by law, ending support for housing first policies that deprioritize, there we go, accountability and fail to promote treatment, recovery, and self-sufficiency, increasing competition among grantees through broaden an applicable pool. So meaning if you are organizations that's looking to get in the grant pool, that's providing housing, that's providing treatment, things of that nature, going to open the pool a little larger because it's just been a scam from the gate. And we all know that. Increasing competition, this is the key, increasing competition among grantees through broadening the application pool or broadening the applicant pool, meaning how they're only accepting 25 applications and it's going to end on this day. No. If you are a failed operation, you in trouble. So I'm going to sit back and say you need to flip that because the Trump administration is not playing. So they're going to broaden the application pool and holding grantees to a higher standard of effectiveness in reducing homelessness and increasing public safety. Boom, there it is. And this is the President's Trump administration. And let me make sure I figure out where I left off. I left off in Section 5. So I'll start at Section 5, Part B on the next live stream. And I'm going to somehow tag it Part 1 because these are some things that the American people need to know. And this is an executive action that was signed for the president, ending crime and disorder on the American streets with the priority of ending homeless encampments, things like so. I'm about to throw a curveball at you and switch gears real quick because the Trump administration basically declassified the Dr. King files. Okay, and I basically went to the website archives and I got it. You can see here, it's a PDF. Okay, and I'm going to basically just read this one right here just to show the issues that we have and what Dr. King's plan was. Okay, because the Democratic Party as we know it today is on its last legs and no one is going to support it. They don't have no leaders. They're trying to pivot and trying to do everything that they need to, or that they want to do. I'm gonna just read the first paragraph just to let you know how serious this thing was, how serious the thing was. And somebody put, where's the list? The list is not out yet. And when that Epstein list come out, we'll be the first to break it. We don't make stories, we break stories, and we'll read them. Okay, we don't care who's on it. So listen, Dr. King's files have been declassified. And this one right here kind of hit me, and I'm going to make it make sense, because as a better Black America, as a Black American who traces history to back to Jamestown, Virginia, the year 1619, and knowing that American politics and studying political science and knowing about the Communist Party, knowing about all of these things that was going on, these were some secrets that they kept from us because Dr. King had a plan. Dr. King was trying to do something else. Okay. And this is why they got rid of him. And then we'll talk about down the road what happened to the party, because this is dated August 15th, 1967. Okay. August 15th, 1967. And this is the FBI CIA files that they had, classified documentation, when they were pretty much following and tracking Dr. King. On the 15th of August, 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King first announced a massive campaign on civil disobedience in DC and other major U.S. urban areas. So think about this. 1967, Dr. King first announced a massive campaign of civil disobedience in DC and other major U.S. urban areas in 1967. Now, 1964 Civil Rights Acts, the 1965 Voting Rights Acts, somehow they make us think that that was just, civil rights was gone. They make us think that that was it, but that wasn't it. And this is why it's crazy for Trump to pretty much sign an executive order to end crime and disorder in American cities. And now they release the files. It seems like they pretty much looked at Dr. King's paperwork and says, okay, it's time for us to, matters that we buried for a long time. And now we're just going to have to step out and do what it do, because on August 15th of 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King first announced a massive campaign of civil disobedience in Washington, D.C. and other urban areas. The plan was reiterated by Dr. King on the 23rd of October, 1967, and also at the conference with newsmen following his testimony before executive section of the National Division on Civil Disorders. You're starting to see the wording Trump is using in that executive order, ending crime and disorder. So I'm sitting back like saying, wow, is it really happening? Is the Republicans really paying attention? And they're going to really do the work of the people, because Dr. King was on to something. Assassin's bullets changed the trajectory of the world. And now we're sitting back, some newly released documentation, and Dr. King is out here back in August of 1967, October of 1967, pretty much testified before the executive session of the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders. Now, at the conference, King called for a prolonged civilizing demonstration in DC. You ready for this? To force Congress to enact a $20 billion a year anti-poverty program for the next 10 years. King again mentioned the program following the week conference, and that was on November the 22nd and December the 6th, with the key personnel on the Southern Christian Leadership Organization. So it's like, wait a minute. Dr. King was on a mission to doing what the president's administration not even attempting to do, but is doing right now. Because the executive order that was signed this week should have been the executive order that was put into play in 1967. And 1967 is the timeline that I was attracted to, because they make us think the 1964 Civil Rights Acts and the 1965 Voting Rights Acts was the only civil rights legislation. But come to find out that Dr. King worked with these other organizations and got their support. It was a promise to them that if you allow the Women's Lib organization, if you allow the migrants, if you allow all of these things to be a part of the Civil Rights Acts, then we will support you on the civil rights, specifically for the Negro and people impoverished. And I'm reading this direct off of the website. Okay, it's a PDF. On the 15th of August, 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King announced a massive campaign. What was the campaign? A massive campaign of civil disobedience in D.C. and other U.S. urban areas. Now, the plan was reiterated by Dr. King on the 23rd of October, 1967. Also at the conference with newsmen following his testimony before an executive session of the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders. Wow. And trying to a bill, framing it the same way. Now, at this conference, King called for a prolonged city paralyzing demonstration in Washington to force Congress to enact a $20 billion a year anti-poverty program for the next 10 years. Is this what the president signed in terms of his executive action? Now, King again made the program following a week-long conference on the 27th of November and also on the 2nd of December with key personnel of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Frogmore, South Carolina, and said that the program was to be officially known as the Washington Spring Project, which is WSP. Okay, now since that time, and his associates have referred to the WSP as the Washington Camp-In, Poor People Camp-In, April Civil Disobedience Program, Poor People's Capital Camp, and Poor People's Camp. And the latter is the most commonly used for the SCLC at present time. So the Poor People's Campaign. So the president is funding the Poor People's Campaign. I'm gonna just stop right here just for the time constraints. And then next time when I go live, hit that notification, because I'm gonna go ahead and read the continuance of Ending Crime and Disorder on American Streets executive order. Then I will read the second paragraph of Dr. King's wording in terms of which I believe they got this from, because it's crazy that they declassified Dr. King's file, and then days Trump signs an executive action with the same writing. It is what it is. It is what it is. So now that we understand that, as a former Democrat who is a nonpartisan independent, as an individual who have no alliance with any political party, this is why we individuals have to make a move. And when I say we have to make a move, we have to make a move because when you study history, study, political science, you got to understand that the Democratic Party, okay, and this is a in-house conversation. I don't know no MAGA Republicans. I don't have no MAGA friends. Okay, but I got Democratic friends who are upset with the Democratic Party, especially, the route that they're going in terms of being progressive. Barack Obama basically said that, gay boys need gay mentors this week, and the community's in an uproar. Have sidebar conversations, nobody feeling it, because boys need positive models, and I'm specifically speaking boys in the Black community. Okay, but our community has been dismantled by the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party of today is yesterday's Communist Party. Think about it. This is why the assassin's bullet got rid of the Black Panthers and got rid of Dr. King, got Malcolm X, because they wanted to run, a revamped communist situation. So check this out. I'm gonna just give you, this is off the Communist Party, this is off their website. Now, the Communist Party USA is a revolutionary working class political party founded in 1919 Chicago, Illinois. Now, the party stands for the interests of the American working class and American people. It stands for the interests of both the present and the future. So this is very democratic. That's the Communist Party. It should be democratic. But look what the Democrats say. Check out what the Democrats say. Let's see what the democratic values are. Okay, let me see what are considered democratic values. I just read the Communist Party be the Democratic. So let's just say a working class and political party, working class party. That should be the Democratic Party. Okay, but today's democratic values will shock you. Okay, today's democratic values will shock you. And all right, what are Democrats' core values? You ready? So to you black revolutionaries, to you black, bourgeoisie, to you black educated people out there, this is the Democratic core values. Number 1, rights. Number 2, the LGBTQ community. Number 3, with a citizenship for undocumented immigrants. Stop right there. That's the Democrats' core value. But Dr. King them was trying to overcome. Dr. King them was desegregating the South. So when you sit back and say the party switched, it never switched. The Democratic Party leadership as a whole separated federal government to preserve slavery. Fact. In 1964, when Lyndon B. Johnson saw that they was losing the black vote, he decided and said, I'm gonna have these niggers voting Democratic for years. And this is when they bought the souls of the baby boomers. This is when they bought the souls of black Americans, and black Americans joined by the droves, thinking that this was the way to go. And come to find out that it was a bait and switch, because Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement, the Civil Rights Act of 64 signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson, the voter right, all that. We thought that was for us. But come to find out, it was a major, and we was hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray. And this is why we're running amok as a people. Because what happened? The core values of the Democratic Party, if you are a Democrat today, and back in the Civil Rights Act, it had nothing to do with none of this. Had nothing to do with abortion rights, because back then abortion was not really spoke on. But the Eugenics Society, ran by Margaret Sanger, which was called Black Genocide, she was the person they gave the funding to. And then the gay community attached itself to the Civil Rights Movement. Okay, gay rights, women's rights, the whole thing. The womenization attached itself to the Civil Rights Movement, which was specifically for black people dealing with Jim Crow laws in the South, dealing with slavery, dealing with all oppression, dealing with whites only, and all of that. How some way, look who's running the Democratic Party now. And back then, Margaret Sanger, mother, they call her Black Genocide. It's a eugenics society, which is population control. And that's what abortion rights is all about. Think about it. And then, black folk marching, trying to desegregate the South, and somehow, some way, the LGBTQ community come in there, which includes white men and white women. Can we be a part of your organization? And if we can, and if we get these bills and laws passed, then we'll support your legislation down the road that's dealing with specifically the Negro and poor whites. But that didn't happen, because clearly Dr. King had a plan, and he basically was upset because in 1967, he announced a mass campaign of civil disobedience in DC, okay, and other major urban cities, because he was basically King repeatedly voiced his concern over the failure. This is the key right here. Over the failure of the 90th Congress to pass meaningful civil rights legislation. Wait a minute. Think about that. That's crazy. This was just declassified. And I don't want to go too far and get off track, but King really voiced his concern over the failure of the 90th Congress to pass meaningful civil rights legislation. Hold up. I thought the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act was the flagship, acts or bills or laws that was signed into law for the Negro, for impoverished people, for the oppressed people. So why is it that in 1967, King is repeatedly voicing his concern over the failure of the 90th Congress to pass meaningful civil rights legislation? I thought, can somebody help me with this? Because it's like, wait a minute. This is 1967, not 1964, not 1965 when the Civil Rights Acts and the Voting Rights Acts was passed. And the Democrats, they say that, but that's where they stopped, because they did not want these Negroes free. They did not want these Negroes liberated. They did not want these Negroes to rise up, because if they did, they would exist today. So they leached themselves onto the Communist Party and went with communism laws, communism viewpoints, destroyed the Communist Party. And if you do the history, any individual that was a part of the Communist Party was either persecuted, jailed, had court cases, or they flipped to Democrat. They flipped to Democrat 100%. We're going to take a deep dive. So hit those notification subscriptions. We're going to figure this thing out, but I'm not going to do it today, but we're going to figure it out. So hit those notifications, because we want to know who was a part of the Communist Party back in the 60s. That's a Democratic elected official or a mayor today. Wink, wink. Yeah, a mayor today. Member of the Communist Party. But we ain't gonna go there. But all I'm saying is, you see how they be playing us and making us think that, oh, the Civil Rights Acts of 1960, Voting Rights Acts passed, and but it stops right there. Okay, because in 1967, King repeatedly voiced his concern over the failure of the 90th Congress to pass meaningful civil rights legislation during the first session, stated that the time had come for civil rights advocates to camp right in front of Washington and stay there by the thousands until the federal government and Congress did something about the problem of the Negroes and poor people. And we thought we got everything we needed and wanted. That's what we thought. That's crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy, man. Wow. This is crazy. 1967, man, King voiced his concerns over the failure of the 90th Congress to pass meaningful rights legislation. So you mean to tell me that the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act was not meaningful civil rights? That's the part that I'm like, wait a minute. I thought, but I can see from a humanistic perspective, it was like, these are what we call concessions. Okay. You help me out, I help you out. Okay. Because women, gays got issues too. So if we could attach the women and the gays to the Civil Rights, Acts, and, make sure the Voting Rights Act gets passed, and then we'll, make sure we take care of the Negro and poor people. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And this is why he was assassinated, because they didn't want the world to know that he had started what we call the Poor People's Campaign outside of the Republican and Democratic Party. So this is why we cannot have any affiliation. But it seems like the Trump administration is throwing us out there to see if we're smart enough to figure it out. Because a lot of times our vibration is so low. We have so much self-hate, and we got so many issues that we can't come together and have a conversation, because we see right here in 67, Dr. King called for prolonged city paralyzing demonstrations to force Congress, not the president, to force Congress to enact a $20 billion a year anti-poverty program for the next 10 years. Wow. And right now, Trump is proposing and putting out a solution to end poverty today. So the Democrats, I think y'all messed up. You messed up, don't you? You messed up, don't you? You messed up. I think the Democrats know they messed up, because they should have stuck to the plan. And now we can't even support the Democratic Party, because if you support the Democratic Party, you got to support no term limits on abortion. Just like Obama, you got to try to get your son to have a mentor, because LGBTQ community. And then you got to support the immigrant, the illegal undocumented immigrant. It says it right here. Democrats support abortion rights, LGBTQ community, and a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. Wow. What about the rest of us? And poor whites by default, y'all with us. Okay, by default. But I'm saying is, what about What about us? Now I can see where Gavin Newsom could not support reparations. Now I can see where Karen was forced to go out there and be the opposition of the president and speak against the president that had intelligence from the FBI and CIA, okay, which is factual, because if they were documenting Dr. King like this through typewriters and tape wires and all of that, without a shadow of a doubt, they got all the intelligence to know what's going on. It says it right here. Dr. King first announced a massive campaign of civil disobedience. You don't think the president of the United States got information that they were going to pretty much protest in LA and for a whole week, kick up dust, and then allow that to spark the King's Day protest, just like they did when the George Floyd situation. It started out here. Okay, we did it big, and then that weekend, everybody marched. They started writing murals and Black Lives Only and all of that. But you see how they hijacked and took the whole platform. But it's crazy that we're getting a chance to see this today. And it's crazy that the Republicans are lining us up, because the Republicans know the only way the Democratic Party survive is if they continue to hoodwink, bamboozle the American people. But they're not buying it. If we decide to have some type of morals or some core values, then we can actually figure it out. Because I don't, like I said, rape, incest, only thing for me in terms of abortion, if you don't sit there and hold it long term and then just abort it. But if it's, let's have a conversation. Okay. But in terms of the LGBTQ community, what is that? The LGBTQ community is a form of white supremacy, because the LGBTQ community includes white men and okay, because if you are a member of the LGBTQ community and you are an illegal immigrant, that's not stopping you from getting chased and thrown into an ICE vehicle with unmarked cars, and you don't even know, you kidnapped and getting shipped out the country. That don't stop you. If black person, you still black regardless of your sexual preference. So all I'm saying is, why not just be a part of your community, be a part of your tribe, and your sexual preference is your sexual preference. As a heterosexual man, I don't promote fornication. I don't promote adultery. I don't promote none of that. That's my business. And if I do something and I slip up, hey, between me and my God, but my God tells me repent, because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So therefore, your sexual preference, who you sleep with, your pronoun and all that, that has nothing to do with anything. Stop. Because if you black, rock with your people, because Dr. King didn't care if you was black or not. Or gay or not. I'm sure it's a whole bunch of gays in the civil rights movement, but that had nothing to do with the program. That had nothing to do with the program. Nobody's bigger than the program. So when you are a black individual or African American, and you are a member of the LGBTQ, you're giving up your black rights, and then you're promoting something that's going to promote supremacy, white supremacy, which means power and authority over you, because the leaders of the LGBTQ community are white. They get all the funding, and they control and they manipulate. They have power, control, and authority over you. That's supremacy. That's why we don't have an issue with the racist reasons, because they do what they do over there. They don't come into our community and bother us. But the LGBTQ community, if you did not know, they got an LGBTQ center on King in Arlington. For real. And I remember doing the George Floyd riots, they had, all up and down Crenshaw. They put black billboards and all of that. And they just basically trying to wash you and to get you to stop being who you are, to get you away from vibration, to get you away from your melanin, to get you away from who you are as an individual. Because if you are of the black community, then it doesn't matter. Love who you gonna love. Okay? It doesn't matter, because we have issues, because Dr. King was introducing the Poor People's Party. He was mad at the Congress. King repeatedly voiced his concern over the failures of the Congress to pass meaningful civil rights. So there are some meaningful civil rights bills on the table that has not been talked about since the 1960s. Think about that. Meaningful, okay? And he was talking about, prolonged city paralyzing demonstrations in DC to force the Congress to enact $20 billion a year for the next 10 years to fix the situation. So now we're looking at a situation where, we attach ourselves to a political party that pretty much just changes with the time. And this is why they say they're going back and they're progressive, because it used to be the party of civil rights, but now it's the party of being progressive. It's the party of abortion rights, the party of LGBTQ rights, and the party of the immigrant. No disrespect to any immigrant, okay? But if they are investing in the immigrant, then that's sign enough to let you know that whites and blacks need to abandon the party, okay? Seriously, because it says it right here. What are the Democrats' core values? Number one, abortion rights. Number two, the LGBT. Number three, a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. When it used to be the party of black people, no, that was a lie. It was a party that just, was able to, hijack. More importantly, recently, like they did Black Lives Matters. And back in the 60s, they hijacked the civil rights movement and basically said, okay, we'll give you something, but we ain't gonna give you what you want, because the 1964 Civil Rights Act was signed in 1964 and the Voting Rights Act is 65. But on August 15th of 1967, Dr. King announced a massive campaign of civil disobedience in DC and other major urban areas. And the plan was reiterated by Dr. King on multiple occasions. Okay. And he pretty much testified before the executive session of the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, and executive order was signed by the president this week, ending crime disorder on American streets. So listen, it's time for us to align ourselves as nonpartisan independents, abandon the Democratic Party, just let it be what it is, because let them go ahead and have their supporters of abortion, let them go ahead and have their supporters of the LGBTQ. It's crazy how they support abortion and same sex. Same sex don't procreate. That's crazy. Okay. I get it, because maybe the queer get pregnant and they don't have to have the baby. I don't know. Okay. But the key to this whole thing of it is that one of the major components of the party is a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. Why can't it be a pathway to success for Black Americans? Why can't it be a pathway to success for poor Americans? Why be a pathway to success for all Americans? Why does it have to focus on abortion, LGBTQ, and immigrants? But if you look at grandpa and grandma, the Democratic Party is a party for the black people. No, still they slaves, because clearly the reason why they want citizenship for undocumented immigrants, because the immigrants do the jobs that black people was forced to do for free. I'm gonna say that again. The immigrant does the job that black slaves was forced to do for free, and for whatever reason, we ain't gonna do it unless you pay us $100 an hour. We ain't picking no fruit for chump change. Pay us $100 an hour. But I do know that individuals with some buses to Oxnard and work on that marijuana farm, and I guarantee you pay them pay them minimum wage, but let them smoke on the job, and I guarantee you will have out there with social security numbers, clear IDs, and you won't be hiring individuals to work under the table. And the reason why a lot of these Democrats are mad, because they can't pay this cheap labor under the table, which is a form of slavery, aka sharecropping. There's nothing new under the sun. So we got to figure this thing out, because it is what it is. So as I close, the Democrat Party of today is the Communist Party of yesterday, which is anti-American, because the party today supports their core values. I didn't see their values. This says right here, what are the Democrats' core values? 1, abortion rights. No term limits abortion. Okay. Number 2, the LGBTQ community. And like I said, that's white supremacy, because the LGBTQ community includes white men and white females. Okay. And number 3, pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. Wow. They don't even mention the black man. Okay. And all you blacks out there for the party, they got you, trying to go after, Trump and all of that. And listen, man, the jig is up. Game over. We got to figure this thing out. It is what it is. It is what it is. So with that being here, I guess you is from the Trump plantation. No, I'm from the Glover plantation from North and South Carolina when I did Ancestry.com. Okay, it took me to the Glover plantation, and then at the Civil War time, eating plantations. And at the end of the Civil War, I mean, at the when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, and they allowed newly freed slaves to enlist, over 1,500 Glovers enlisted in the Civil War, made a major part in defeating the Democratic Dixiecratic South. It is what it is. It is what it is. Yo, I'm from North Carolina. I'm from Fayetteville. Hey, go look up the plantation. That's where we come from. Okay, we're not illegal immigrants. We're documented. We've been documented for over 400 years when they documented the first transit slave, in Jamestown, Virginia in the year 1619. Let me see here. Somebody says spewing crap. Okay, so the crap that he says I'm spewing, okay, I guess that's the word, okay, is from the White House, ending crime and disorder on American streets. So you can see the gatekeepers are pissed off because these gatekeepers, these whites, these white people, they want you so dumb and ignorant that you will support a political party that keeps them supreme over you. So this is why the gatekeepers are mad. So anybody that put those comments for me reading, pretty much basically a current event, you got an issue with it, then you really have to check yourself. And I'm gonna call you a hater because individuals who makes comments like that, they hate themselves. They don't love themselves. And anytime you point one finger at somebody, you got three fingers pointing back at you. Okay. So don't be mad that the vibration is here. Don't be mad that, that time's up. Don't be mad that it's time to move to a whole nother level. It is what it is. Love you will go first. Absolutely. So if you don't love yourself, don't even think about loving your neighbor, because if you don't love yourself, you will go, commit a, like I said, you're suicidal. It is what it is. It is what it is. And somebody put in the comments, awesome flex. Boom. And then somebody put in there ridiculous, because hates themselves that much that they will, name call, be disrespectful to individuals, who want to provide knowledge and information to individuals that probably wouldn't have gotten it. Okay, because you're not going to get this anywhere else. There's nobody going to take their time and read this stuff like I just did, and I'm going to continue, because God's people shall not perish due to the lack of knowledge. So now that the Democratic Party, has changed its core values, it's not about civil rights anymore. It's not about in segregation, because if you did not know, George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, stood in front of the federal troops talking about segregation now, segregation forever. They didn't want none of it to end, but somehow, somewhere they want to trick you and hope that you're dumb and you don't understand the truth of the party, because the party do anything just to survive. Just like it moves from whatever its core values was in the past. But look what it is today. To be a Democrat, the core values, it's like taking the Pledge of Allegiance. Abortion rights, no term limits, the LGBTQ community, which does not produce, which is a form of population control. Think about it. And it includes white people, white males and white females. So if a black person that's supporting that, you are under the, umbrella of white supremacy. Okay. If you are a brown, I'm sure that there's a Latino that went to the Pride Parade and, part of the LGBTQ LMNOP, they running around in the Speedo and all of that. But then after the Pride Parade is over, ICE chased you down, deported you. So you think that's love from that party? Nah. So what I mean is, it's time to really understand and be independent, because the president has signed a executive order ending crime and disorder on the streets of the United States of America. It's the press. Okay, press, meaning we press for no tax on tips. We press for no tax on overtime. We pressed on no tax on Social Security. And what happened? It implemented in the big, beautiful bill. The Democrats are mad. They throwing out all this propaganda. But contrary to popular belief, the biggest tax breaks went to individuals making between $15,000 and $30,000. And that was a tax cut 7%. So everybody got a tax cut. Okay, the highest tax cuts went to the poorest Americans, not black Americans, not white Americans, the poorest Americans. So now we got to understand it's about being a humanitarian. But America got to handle this business with the black folk before we get there. Okay, because on August 15 of 1967, Dr. King announced a massive campaign of civil disobedience, a massive campaign. But somehow we're to believe that the Civil Rights Acts was the only thing. We got to believe that the Voting Rights Acts, that was it, move on. But that's when they hijacked, ostracized King, ultimately unalived him, did away with with Malcolm X and political prisoners, did away with the leadership of the Communist Party and took on the communist leaders, made them Democrats, and they ran that till now. Okay, and to confirm that, King repeatedly voiced his concern for the failure of the 90th Congress to pass meaningful civil rights legislation during the first session. This is 1967. So if he's talking about because they failed to pass meaningful civil rights, so you're telling me the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act was not meaningful rights? No, because King wanted to end poverty and wanted to force Congress to enact a $20 billion a year anti-poverty program for the 2 years for the Negro and poor Americans. So the Democrats continue to switch. Now they fell off the ledge because if you're a believer in God, if you are a minister, if you are a pastor, a teacher, an educator, there's no way you can openly support the Democratic Party. And just because I said that does not mean be a Republican. I'm saying to be a nonpartisan independent, because I know individuals who relationships and they break up. They don't break up, with their partner and then go get into an immediate another relationship. You take some time out and be independent, just like getting a divorce. But in this case, we was forced to be married to the Democratic Party, and this is why the Democratic Party is going to be forced to provide compensation. For me, $20 billion a year back in 1967, you put that on interest, so we're talking about $80 billion a year for the next 10 years. And then the Trump administration is out, programs to end crime and disorder on American streets, talking about, grants for, housing programs, for drug programs and things like that. So it is what it is. It is what it is. It's a beautiful time, and not on our watch. We're going to make sure and hold the Trump administration to every word. And how are we going to do that? Because we're the Civilian Oversight Committee. Civilian Oversight Committee, meaning we going to provide presidential oversight to make sure and ensure that the things that they are suggesting and signing these executive orders and actions come into fruition, because it's a beautiful thing. Because I know anybody that live in the city, is down with ending crime and disorder on American streets. So with that being said, somebody put hope, and I'm hoping too. So Jesse Jack, to keep hope alive. And what do we have if we don't have hope? With that being said, man, y'all have an amazing day. This your man Bushan Glover signing out. Better Black America TV. Hit notification, hit that like, subscription, because I'm gonna do a part 2, because I'm gonna get through all of it. Through the King files, through this executive order, because I only went through section 4, I believe. But if you missed it, watch playback. It is what it is, and blessings unto you as well. So with that being said, God bless. Have a good day. This your man Bushan Glover signing out. Better Black America TV. Peace out.